Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. We're going deep into the world of UFOs and the U.S. government's search for alien life.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is a good one. It's a really, really fascinating topic. And we're going to be using a book by Garrett M. Graff called UFO, the U.S. government's search for alien life.
Catchy.
Yeah. And you might be surprised to learn that it's not just about little green men.
Right.
This is about power secrecy and that very human desire to understand, our place in the universe.
That's a big one.
It is a big one. So what is it about this topic that is so fascinating to you?
Well, I think what's really fascinating is that it's not just this kind of fringe fascination.
Right.
The government's involvement with UFO investigations is deeply intertwined with major historical events and cultural anxieties.
That's what really drew me to this book. Everyone knows about Roswell, right? Area 51. But there's so much more to this story, and it starts even earlier than that.
Okay.
With Orson Welles' 1938 radio broadcast of War of the Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Vaguely, I wasn't alive then, but...
Right, of course. But this was a big cultural event.
Yeah.
And people genuinely thought that Martians were invading.
Sure. It makes sense. Radio was everything.
It really was. It was such a primary source of information and of news.
So I can see how that would really freak people out.
Yeah. I mean, even today, people believe things that they hear on the news
Right.
or on the radio or see on the internet.
Yeah.
So it really tapped into this kind of primal fear of the unknown.
I think what's really interesting about that, too, is that it really set the stage for how we as a culture would react to future reports of strange phenomena in the sky.
So like a template, almost.
Yeah, almost like we had a dry run with War of the Worlds.
And then it just kind of set the tone for future events. It's interesting how those early anxieties about the unknown really kind of set the tone for how the government would approach UFOs later on, especially during the Cold War.
Oh, yeah. You can't really separate the two, I don't think.
No, you can't.
I mean, think about it. You have the threat of nuclear annihilation,
right,
espionage,
right,
and this constant fear of the other. And then suddenly, people are reporting these unidentified flying objects. So it's no wonder the government got involved.
So it wasn't necessarily about covering up aliens. It was more about managing public perception and avoiding panic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think Graff's argument is that the government was more concerned about appearing incompetent. Like not having the answers to this seemingly inexplicable phenomenon. They were afraid of losing control of the narrative, especially in a time of such heightened tension.
I mean, can you imagine if right now something like that happened?
It would be chaos.
It would be total chaos.
Yeah.
So that fear really shaped their approach to UFO investigations, especially in those early days. But before we get too deep into the government's involvement, we have to talk about Kenneth Arnold.
Okay.
His sighting in 1947 really kicked off what we now call the modern UFO era, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about that.
So Arnold was a pilot, and he was flying near Mount Rainier, and he reported seeing 9 unidentified objects flying in formation. And he described them as looking like flying saucers. And that term just stuck.
And it became the
go-to image.
The icon.
Yeah.
It's funny because Graff mentions that one Air Force officer told Arnold that he should be writing fiction.
Oh, really?
If he wasn't really seeing these things.
Wow.
Yeah. It's such a very, dismissive.
Yeah, it's just like
a very kind of flippant response.
Yeah, very typical of the early skepticism that surrounded UFO reports. But, I mean, when you think about the sheer volume of sightings, the sincerity of many witnesses, it made it impossible to ignore.
Right. And then, just a few weeks after Arnold's sighting, we have the mother of all UFO incidents, Roswell.
Oh, yeah.
Even today, it's still shrouded in mystery. What do you make of the conflicting narratives surrounding Roswell?
Well, Roswell is like the perfect example of how a lack of clear information combined with government secrecy can fuel decades of speculation.
It's the perfect storm.
It really is.
Yeah.
So you have these initial reports of a crashed flying disc, right? And then they were quickly replaced with the official explanation of a downed weather balloon.
Right.
But the inconsistencies in those explanations and the lack of transparency just deepen the mystery.
It's like the government's attempt to cover up what really happened, or at least what they knew, only made people more suspicious.
Exactly. And that lack of trust would continue to plague the government's relationship with the UFO phenomenon for decades to come.
Right. So how did the government go from dismissing UFO sightings to actually setting up a program to investigate them? Was it just public pressure?
I think it was a combination of factors. Public pressure was definitely mounting. especially as civilian UFO groups began to emerge, demanding answers and transparency. But there was also this growing concern within the government, particularly the Air Force, that these unexplained sightings might pose a potential security threat.
I guess if you don't know what something is and it's flying around in your airspace, it's natural to assume the worst.
Right. Like, what is that? Is it the Russians? Were we being invaded?
Right.
So that's where Project Sign came in.
Okay.
This was the Air Force's first official attempt to investigate UFO sightings, to try and separate fact from fiction, and to determine if these objects posed any real danger.
And that's where J. Allen Hynek, the astronomer, comes in.
Yes.
He was initially brought in as a skeptic, right?
He was. His story's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it shows how even the most skeptical minds can be swayed by evidence.
Yeah.
So initially he was tasked with debunking UFO sightings.
Okay.
But as he delved deeper into these reports, he started to realize that some cases defied easy explanations.
He changed his mind.
He did. And he actually became one of the most prominent voices advocating for serious scientific investigation into UFOs.
Oh, wow.
So his evolving perspective really reflects the changing understanding of the phenomenon within the scientific community.
Okay, so we've got the government starting to take it seriously. We have this astronomer who's changing his mind. But while the Air Force was trying to figure things out with Project Sign, the public wasn't just sitting idly by. They were forming their own groups to investigate UFOs, weren't they?
Absolutely. There were groups like NCAP and APRO, and they emerged, driven by citizens who were passionate about uncovering the truth about UFOs. They meticulously documented sightings, they interviewed witnesses, and they advocated for greater government transparency.
Okay. So did that advocacy, did that work? Did it go over well with the government's desire for secrecy?
I mean, there was definitely tension there because the government was still operating in this Cold War mindset. And so they were very wary of releasing information that could be seen as a weakness or that could fuel public panic.
Right.
On the other hand, you had these citizen groups who were demanding answers and accusing the government of a cover-up.
So we've got this battle going on between those who want to know and those who want to keep things quiet.
Exactly. It was a really interesting dynamic.
It seems like the government's approach to UFOs, especially in those early days, was as much about managing public perception as it was about actually investigating the phenomenon itself.
Yeah, that's one of the key takeaways, I think, from Graff's book, is that the government was walking this tightrope, trying to balance national security concerns with the public's right to know.
Right.
And it's a tension that would continue throughout the history of UFO investigations.
It's fascinating. And speaking of managing public perception, the government took a pretty drastic step in 1953 with the formation of the Robertson Panel. What was the real purpose of that panel?
So the Robertson Panel was a real turning point in the government's handling of the UFO issue.
Okay.
It was convened by the CIA, and it was tasked with assessing the potential threat posed by UFOs and recommending ways to manage public perception.
So they weren't really interested in finding out what UFOs were. They were more concerned about how to control the narrative.
Exactly. And their key takeaway was that UFOs, while not being a direct threat to national security, could be exploited for psychological warfare. They feared that adversaries, particularly the Soviets, could use the UFO phenomenon to sow discord and panic among the American public.
So the real threat wasn't aliens. It was the potential for mass hysteria and social disruption.
Exactly. And that conclusion would shape the government's approach to UFOs for years to come.
Wow.
They recommended a campaign to debunk UFO sightings, to downplay their significance, and to discredit those who took them seriously.
It's almost like they were trying to make UFOs go away, not by proving that they didn't exist, but by making it taboo to even talk about them.
Yeah. It was a very deliberate strategy to control the narrative.
And all of this was happening against the backdrop of the Cold War, the space race, and a growing public fascination with the possibilities of life beyond Earth.
It's just this amazing convergence of events.
It is. It's like you have these competing narratives playing out at the same time, you know? The government trying to control the information, the public eager for answers, and the scientists struggling to make sense of it all. What a fascinating time in history.
It really is. It's like a powder keg of ideas and anxieties.
And it lays the groundwork for even more complex and intriguing developments that would unfold in the decades to come. But we're going to have to save that for part 2 of this deep dive.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, everyone.
This is getting good.
So we left off talking about how the government was trying to manage the whole UFO thing.
Right.
But even as they were trying to downplay the phenomenon, they continued to investigate it, right? Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
That took over from Project Sign, and that became the longest-running official UFO investigation.
That's right. It ran from 1952 to 1969.
Wow.
And during that time, they investigated over 12,000 reported UFO sightings.
That's incredible, 12,000. Did they ever find anything concrete?
Well,
any evidence of extraterrestrial activity?
That depends on how you define concrete evidence.
Okay.
Project Blue Book concluded that the vast majority of sightings could be explained as misidentified aircraft weather phenomena.
Okay.
Or even hoaxes.
Right. But not all of them. Graff talks about how J. Allen Hynek, who was still involved with the investigations, continued to argue that a small percentage of cases remained truly unexplained.
Hynek is really crucial here because he went from being a skeptic to advocating for serious scientific study of UFOs.
So he really did a complete 180.
He really did. And he developed this classification system for sightings. It's known as the Close Encounter Scale.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, which is still used today.
Wow.
It ranges from simple visual sightings to cases involving alleged physical contact with extraterrestrial beings.
So even though Project Blue Book was ultimately shut down, Hynek's work really helped to legitimize the study of UFOs.
Absolutely.
And it paved the way for future investigations.
For sure. And as the government was wrapping up, Project Blue Book public pressure for answers was reaching a boiling point.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Which led to congressional hearings on UFOs in 1966.
Oh, wow. So they actually had hearings in Congress about UFOs. Did those hearings provide any real breakthroughs?
Well, they certainly brought the issue of UFOs into the mainstream spotlight.
Right.
But they didn't really deliver the kind of definitive answers that many were hoping for.
Okay.
The government remained tight-lipped about what they knew.
Well,
and many people felt like they were still being kept in the dark.
It's like no matter how much they investigated, they still weren't giving people the information that they wanted.
Exactly. It was very frustrating for a lot of people who were really looking for answers.
Right. The hearings did, however, lead to the commissioning of the Condon Report.
Oh, yes.
This was a major scientific study conducted by the University of Colorado.
Right.
And it was supposed to be the definitive word on UFOs. So what were the findings of the Condon Report?
Well, much to the disappointment of UFO enthusiasts.
Oh.
The Condon Report concluded that there was no evidence to support the existence of extraterrestrial spacecraft.
Oh, wow.
They argued that most, if not all, UFO sightings could be explained through conventional means.
So they were debunking.
Essentially, yes.
But even the Condon Report acknowledged that a small percentage of cases remained unexplained.
Right.
And this only fueled the debate further.
Of course. Because critics argued that the study was biased towards debunking.
Okay.
And that it ignored crucial evidence.
So even with all this scientific investigation, the mystery of UFOs persisted. And with the official end of Project Blue Book in 1969, the government essentially washed its hands of the whole thing.
Right. They're done. We're out.
But that didn't stop people from searching for answers, did it?
Not at all. In fact, the lack of official government involvement might have even fueled speculation and conspiracy theories.
Oh, that makes sense.
This is when we start to see the rise of self-proclaimed whistleblowers.
Okay.
Individuals claiming to have inside knowledge of secret government cover-ups and hidden UFO programs.
So this is when it really starts to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
And the internet played a huge role in spreading these theories, didn't it?
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Because suddenly people from all over the world could connect and share their experiences, their theories, and their beliefs about UFOs.
The internet became a breeding ground for alternative narratives about UFOs.
Right, because you don't have the traditional gatekeepers of information.
Yeah.
So people can just say whatever they want.
Exactly. The MJ-12 documents, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Which purportedly revealed a secret government group tasked with managing recovered alien technology circulated widely online.
Those MJ-12 documents are a great example of how a lack of official confirmation, combined with the internet's ability to amplify information, can create a whole mythology around a topic like UFOs.
It's a fascinating case study in how information, misinformation, and belief systems interact in the digital age.
It really is.
Yeah.
So while the government was officially out of the UFO business, public interest continued to simmer, fueled by these alternative narratives and online communities.
Right.
But then in the early 2000s, something happened that brought UFOs back into the mainstream spotlight. What was it?
That would be the involvement of Robert Bigelow.
Okay.
A billionaire entrepreneur who had a long-standing interest in UFOs.
A billionaire?
Yeah, he actually funded private UFO research.
Wow.
And even contracted with the government to investigate unexplained aerial phenomena.
So he used his own money.
He did. He was very passionate about it.
Bigelow's work, through his company Bigelow Aerospace, really marked a turning point because it brought a new level of credibility and resources to the study of UFOs.
Right. It wasn't just fringe groups anymore.
Yeah.
This was a legitimate businessman putting his money where his mouth is.
And then in 2017, the Pentagon dropped a bombshell. They confirmed the existence of a secret UFO program.
Yes, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP.
And they released those incredible videos.
Oh, yes.
Captured by Navy pilots, showing unidentified objects exhibiting extraordinary capabilities.
Those videos, along with the Pentagon's confirmation of ATIP, really shifted the conversation.
Yeah, because suddenly it wasn't just conspiracy theorists talking about UFOs.
Right.
It was the government, the military, and mainstream media outlets.
That was huge.
It was huge. It was a huge validation for those who had been studying UFOs for years, often ridiculed and dismissed.
Absolutely. And it sparked this renewed push for greater transparency and scientific investigation into the phenomenon.
So after all this time, all this back and forth, all this secrecy, all these investigations, the central question remains, are we alone?
That's the ultimate mystery, isn't it?
It is, and it's a question that continues to drive our fascination with UFOs.
It forces us to confront our place in the universe.
Yeah.
To consider the possibilities of life beyond Earth, and to grapple with the profound implications of such a discovery.
It really is a question that kind of shakes us to our core a little bit.
It does. It makes you rethink everything.
Yeah, and that's what makes this topic so compelling. It's not just about strange lights in the sky. It's about our search for meaning, our desire to understand the unknown, and our place in the vastness of the cosmos.
It's about pushing the boundaries of our knowledge, challenging our assumptions, and being open to the possibility that we might not be alone in this incredible universe.
Wow, that's a great point. Wow. It feels like we've covered so much in this deep dive, from those early sightings and the government's attempts to control the narrative, to the emergence of citizen investigators and the more recent revelations about secret government programs. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it really shows how this topic has evolved from the fringes of society to the halls of Congress and even the Pentagon.
And yet, after all this time, all these investigations, the biggest question still remains unanswered. Are we alone in the universe?
It's a question that has captivated humanity for millennia. I mean, we look up at the stars and wonder, are there other beings out there looking back at us, asking the same questions?
As we've been talking about all of these investigations, it's really struck me that even if we never find definitive proof of alien life, the very act of searching has had a profound impact on us.
It's true. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has pushed us to expand our scientific understanding, develop new technologies, and even reconsider our place in the cosmos.
It's like the search itself has been a catalyst for discovery, even if it hasn't yet led us to the ultimate prize.
Right. Like, think about the advancements in astronomy, our ability to detect and analyze distant planets, the SETI program, listening for signals from other civilizations. These are all driven, at least in part, by our desire to answer that fundamental question. Are we alone?
And in searching for answers, we've learned so much about the universe, about the incredible diversity of planets and star systems out there.
Yeah. It's humbling to realize how much we still don't know, how vast and complex the universe really is.
I remember reading in Graff's book about how even the definition of life is being challenged by our exploration of extreme environments here on Earth. We're finding organisms thriving in conditions that we once thought were impossible for life to exist.
Right. It makes you wonder what kind of life forms might exist on other planets, in completely different environments. Yeah. What we consider alien might be far more diverse and incredible than we can even imagine.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of this whole UFO phenomenon, the impact it's had on our culture, our stories, our movies, our art.
Oh, absolutely. From War of the Worlds to Close Encounters of the Third Kind to Arrival. The idea of alien contact has been a recurring theme in our cultural narratives. It reflects our anxieties, our hopes, our fascination with the unknown.
It seems like our collective imagination is both terrified and excited by the prospect of encountering something truly alien, something that challenges our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe.
And that, perhaps, is the most enduring legacy of the UFO phenomenon. It forces us to confront the big questions, to think beyond our limited perspective, to imagine the possibilities that lie beyond our current understanding.
It encourages us to keep searching, to keep exploring, to keep asking those fundamental questions about our place in the cosmos.
And even if we never find definitive answers, the journey itself is worthwhile. It's a journey that expands our knowledge, challenges our assumptions, and reminds us of the incredible wonder and mystery of the universe we inhabit.
As we wrap up this deep dive into UFOs and the U.S. government's search for alien life, it feels like we've barely scratched the surface of this complex and fascinating topic.
There's so much more to explore, so many unanswered questions, and the search for answers continues.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep an open mind, to stay curious, and to never stop asking those big questions about our place in the universe. Who knows what we might discover along the way?
And perhaps someday we'll finally have that definitive answer to the question that has captivated humanity for so long. Are we alone?
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the unknown. We hope you found it as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those eyes on the skies.
Loved this video? Smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And don't forget to order the book, link below.